Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen and Sewer Commissioners of January 24th, 2012 in order. Mr. Cruz is under the weather and not feeling well. So could we have a motion to appoint a clerk for the meeting, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Selectman Winslow as clerk pro tempore.
Second.
I have a motion made by Mr. Schneider, seconded by Mrs. Begley. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's 5-0-0.
She made the announcements.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Chair. 4 selectmen are present: Mrs. Begley, Mr. Holmes, Mr. Schneider, Mrs. Winslow, as well as the Town Administrator, Mr. Andrews.
Thank you very much. Under announcements,
He can do them.
the Onset Bay Association is having a Las Vegas night this coming Saturday, January 28th, if you're feeling lucky. It's a fundraiser for the 20th Annual Onset Blues Festival to be held at Stevie B's Onset Resort in Onset from 8 to midnight. They'll be playing blackjack, roulette, dollar wheel, and some other things. Admission is $2, and the $2 donation will go directly to the Blues Festival. Again, on February 25th, there is a used book sale at the Spinning Library from 10 to 3:30. We'll keep this request going until I hear from Mrs. Green otherwise, but we're always looking for volunteers for the Meals on Wheels drivers and to assist with the lunch program. Feel free to contact the Council on Aging. And on January 26th, this coming Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. at the Wareham Free Library, Wareham Community Television will be presenting the postcards from Onset, which I hear is an excellent documentary of Onset. So my printer broke on the way out the door, so that's as far as I got this week. If there are any other announcements, Mrs. Winslow, do you have any?
None, thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Schneider.
Chair.
I have no
Mr.
announcements.
Begley? Nothing? No garden club? No, nothing else? Mr. Andrews? Am I missing anything? Okay. That'll take care of the announcements. We have citizens' participation. Anyone would like to speak? Raise your hand. We have one. Mr. Robinson, come right on up.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Ronald Robinson, Oakdale Heights Lane in Wareham. Basically, the reason why I'm here this evening is because when I looked at the agenda, I see that there are a couple of items relating to Contract 2, the sewer project in Oakdale. And each time I'm at the meeting here, I have a problem in that when the selectmen discuss business such as these on the agenda, it's in the later part of the meeting, and it's like a closed session. The audience or the peanut gallery, if you may, all we can do is sit and listen, which is very informative, but there's no input from anyone concerning any of the matters that are being addressed. Those folks who would like to address some issues come forward, such as me, at this particular time during the community participation portion. The only problem is that when I leave this seat and I go back and sit down, later on in the agenda, the real sewer business is going to be discussed without any input from me or anyone else. It's a kind of a closed deal. It's like a done matter. So I wanted to come in, and I have a question I want to raise. As you know, I've been involved with the Oakdale Betterment Association and looking at this Oakdale sewer project. I'll get through this real quick. And as you know, we have an attorney who's been in contact with you since December. However, I have not seen any response from the board in terms of the letter that our attorney wrote to you, raising various questions.
Well, Mr. Robinson, let me just stop you right there. We're not going to discuss that letter.
Okay.
We're not going to discuss any litigation that may be ongoing. We're just not going to do that.
That's fine. I won't go into that. What I will go into is the fact that I have a question. I want to pose a question. I'd like an answer. The question is, when I go through contracts, what you call contract 1 and contract 2, both contracts for some reason have the same contract number, CWSRF 3022. Now, I'm not in the construction industry, but I think I know that a contract is a contract based on the number. All requisitions and invoices come in under that number. Now, if indeed Oakdale, which you've referred to as contract 2, and then there's Parkwood, which you've referred to as contract 1, if that's the case, I don't understand how both of those can be under the same contract number. Now, I remember sometime in the past when we raised questions about the contracts, about why there wasn't one total contract for all three projects. And the word was that, and I kind of went along with it, the word was that it was easier and it would probably be beneficial because the bids would come in lower since it wasn't such a one big bid, and therefore everyone would profit by having a lower bid. That's all right. However, if that was the case, then I submit to you that what should have happened is that the board should have been referring to these contracts as phases rather than contract 1, 2, and 3, which they're not. Essentially and legally, it seems to me that it's contract 1, number CWSRF 3022, phase 1, and there's contract 1, CWSRF 3022, phase 2. So by the fact that you're not referring to these as phases, and the fact that you're referring to them as different contract kind of lends credence to the fact that they're separate contracts and therefore they're separate bids, and therefore they can be, the betterments can be dished out in 3 separate contracts. I would say that that's wrong. Now, with all due respect, you were not the board sitting when that decision was made, and when those terms first started being thrown around. I understand that. However, you're the present board, and it falls in your lap. I would like an answer, probably from your legal department, to explain to me how is it that those contracts are both the same number, and some rationale as to why it was changed from what should have been phases or some other determination, some other word, as opposed to contract 1, 2, and essentially 3.
Sure. And those answers will be forthcoming in a response from town council.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right,
May
Mark.
I ask Mr. Robinson a question? Is that all right? Is that all right, Mr. Robinson?
Sure. Sure.
I'm just curious, because you mentioned Oakdale Sewer and Betterment Association. Are you on sewer?
Pardon me?
Are you on the sewer?
No, I'm a member of Oakdale. I live in Oakdale. I pay taxes in Oakdale.
But you're not on sewer?
No.
Okay, just wanted
Yep.
to clarify.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Madam Town. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
No, that's okay. My name is Paula Mazzola, and I am here for 39 Bayview abatement. Am I to understand that when you discuss that, I cannot give you any inputs? Is that what he meant?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
You have a specific incident here. He's talking about when they do sewer business,
Okay.
the public's not allowed to come out.
Oh, okay, all right. I
You-
just
you
wanted to
have-
double
you have-
check.
It's not the same thing.
Okay, good. Thank
Okay.
you.
And we'll try not to make you wait till the end of the night as well. Madam Town Clerk, please. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Holmes, members of the board, Mr. Andrews. I want to thank you for allowing me to come before you tonight. I have a couple announcements. The first one is regarding the state primary, which is scheduled for Tuesday, March 6th. The precincts will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The last day to register to vote, change a party, or change your address will be scheduled for Wednesday, February 15th. My office will be open until 8 o'clock p.m. for that express purpose. In a primary, such as this, there are only certain people that are allowed to vote, and that would be anyone that is registered as unenrolled, Democrat, Republican, or Green Rainbow. Any other affiliation is what we refer to them as, not parties. They are not allowed to vote in this particular primary. And anybody out there that has a question about that, they really need to call my office, which is 508-291-3140. Okay. Also for this election, which for some reason I think it's just because they're looking for a Republican candidate, people are under the impression that there is only a Republican ballot. That's not true. We have 3 ballots that any unenrolled voter can choose from, and that is going to be the Republican ballot, which is always blue, the Democratic ballot, which is either pink or that funny orange, or the Green Rainbow, which of course is green. So they would have to choose, they would have to choose one of these ballots, vote the ballot. It is set up so that if you are unenrolled, you automatically go back to unenrolled once we scan you into the system. So it's not a case where it was years ago where you had to fill out a new card to become unenrolled. It's not like that anymore. With that being said, I am also asking the board to vote on the warrant to call the election, which should be in your packet, and to please sign that tonight. That has to be posted. I like to do it early because it's easier than I probably would forget, and I don't want to do that. So I always try to get it to you as early as I can. But it is in your packet.
You want to take care of that right now?
Yes, but Mr. Chair, through you, may I ask Madam Clerk just one question? Madam Clerk, can you just clarify that unenrolled voters are allowed to vote in the primary?
Yes.
But they do need to pick
They
one
have
of
to
those
declare.
3.
They
Okay.
call it declaring. They have to declare a ballot. They have to ask for a Democrat, Republican, or Green Rainbow ballot.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the presidential primary warrant to either of the constables of the town of Wareham. Greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth, you are hereby required to notify and warn the inhabitants of said town who are qualified to vote in primaries to vote at Precinct 1, Memorial Town Hall, 54 Marion Road, Precinct 2, Hammond School, 13 Highland Ave, Precinct 3, Minot Forest School, Minot Ave, Precinct 4, Deacon School, Main Street, Precinct 5, Deacon School, Main Street, Precinct 6, Lodge of Elks, Cranberry Highway, on Tuesday, the 6th day of March 2012, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the following purpose: to cast their votes in the presidential primary for the candidates of political parties for the following offices: presidential preference for this Commonwealth, State Committee Man, Senatorial District, State Committee Woman, Senatorial District, Ward or Town Committee, Town of Wareham. Hereof fail not, and make return of this warrant with your doings thereon at the time and place of said voting, given under our hands this 24th day of January 2012.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0. Madam Clerk, do you
4.
need that right this second, or is it okay to
No,
go back
you
to the
can
basket?
sign it at the end of the meeting and just get it. I'll get it tomorrow morning. Okay.
Mr. Chair, it's 4-0-0.
All right. My mistake.
And thank you, Madam Clerk, for double siding.
I try to remember. Okay, also, right now, according to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 51, Section 4, we must conduct a yearly census, and it's supposed to begin January 1st. This year, it was held up, only because with the redistricting, we had 3 of our precincts, we had our boundaries changed. Like Precinct 4 was moved into Precinct 6. Not much, but enough to change several households. So what ended up happening is we are now in the process of preparing the census forms. We're hoping to get them out in the next week or 2. Okay? with that, we are asking all residents when they get their form to make sure and check it's the right-hand corner. It'll give you the number of your precinct, and so that you know, make note of where you vote. If there are any questions, again, they need to call us and ask about it, and we will take care of it and direct them where we need to do, they need to go. Okay. Precincts will be in the following areas. Precinct 1 is, of course, Memorial Town Hall. Precinct 2 will now be at the Ethel E. Hammond School. Precinct 3 will be back at Minot Forest School. Precinct 4 and 5 remain at Deacon's Elementary School, and Precinct 6 will be at the Lodge of Elks. At this time, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Onset VFW for housing us for the last 3.5 years. Even though we did pay a small stipend to be there, they did not have to say yes. And they housed 2 precincts, and they always had a man there to help us out. So I really do want to give them kudos for that, because the commander and his officers really, they went out of their way for us. Even though it did get difficult at times. I know there were a lot of complaints about the driveway, but we managed. Okay. Also, right now, one of the things that was brought up at one of your meetings was the purging of the CVR system. And I guess it caused a little bit of a confusion. We were notified on October 1st that we were expected to be in compliance with the statutory and regulatory mandates of the Central Voter Registry System, which is set forth in Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 51, Section 47C, and 950 CMR, which is the Code of Massachusetts Regulations 58, regarding entering voter activity and updating inactive voter information, which is also required by General Law, Chapter 51, Sections 37 and 37A. We were mandated to complete this process by November 12th. We managed to get most of it done. The only thing we didn't manage to get done was sending out cards. You are required to send a card, which I brought a sample. This has to go to all voters. We have to put the verbiage explaining to them what's going on. It gets folded in half. The town is required not only to put postage on the card that we're sending to them, we also have to post the card that's coming back. So it ended up being a little bit expensive. The reason why we were delayed, because we had to do a reserve fund transfer, which I did bring the paperwork. I think people didn't realize it. The reserve fund transfer amounted to $4,347.51. And that covered changing of the precincts. We had to send cards out, which are similar to these, and with the change with the inactive voters. So changing them from active to inactive, we have to notify them. We sent out 2,800 cards, is how many. I looked in the drawer before I got here. We probably got back about, I would say about 1,700. So we have 1,100 people out there that have not responded. And we really do need them to pay attention to that, because what's going to happen is at the primary, they're going to come in thinking that they're registered to vote, because what happens if we get those cards back and they haven't responded? We have to delete them. So we update the people that have responded, and we have to delete the people that don't respond. So they're going to come on the 6th, and they're going to be looking for a ballot, and they're not going to be registered. So we need them to get in here and check their status. That's what we're here for. They need to make those phone calls. So I'm urging them to do that. But it is by law that we have to notify them. We can't just purge the system, make them inactive, and then leave it at that. They have to be notified, and they were.
So to clarify, because that's a little different than what we heard last week, to clarify, and that's why I asked Mark to talk with you, because what we heard last week was if you were inactive, you could show up at the voting booth with an ID, and then you'd be allowed to vote.
Yes, you can. Now, I was talking about the people that were being deleted because they weren't returning their cards. But anybody that is inactive, if you remain inactive, what happens is you will be expected to come into the polls. You not only have to have an ID, you have to fill out an affirmation of current and continual residence. You have to prove to the warden that you still reside in the town of Wareham. So if you have an ID and you've moved within the last few months,
right,
you have to prove it, and that can be with a lease, a utility bill, a voter's card, you come into the office and deal with us, we'll take care of it at our level before you even get to the primary. If they can't produce an ID at that particular time, they have to do, they'll do a ballot, and you know what, and it's going to skirt my mind as to the name of it, but it's a provisional ballot is what they have to do. They'll be able to vote, but that ballot will be set aside, and it won't be counted until I have to check back with CVR on the state level to make sure that they are a registered voter. So it takes a little while.
So the correct answer is make sure you fill out every census that comes to your house.
You have to vote every other state election. So that's every 4 years you have to vote.
Right.
And you have to fill out a census every year. If you don't, and it's out of our hands, we have to follow the mandate. They will pressure us to make you inactive and to delete the voters. So, I mean, they actually asked us to delete 6,200 people. But working with my staff, we managed to get it down to 2,800. Because we know it pays to live in the town. We know who the people are. We knew people we were able to call. So we were able to cut it back. So it saved the town some money also. So it was a lot. But they need to get in here. They need to call us. Whatever. I don't care if they stop by 5 times, but they need to get into the office so that we can make sure they are registered. Now, the next election we have coming up would be the April 3rd town election. They will have to register to vote by March 14th, which is also on a Wednesday. My office will be open until 8 o'clock that particular night also. If they want to participate in town meeting, they have to be registered to vote by the 14th of March. So that would cover both the election, of course, and town meeting. And basically, that's all I have.
Any other questions for the town clerk? Well, thank you very much, Madam Clerk, and
Thank
we'll
you
get
very
that
much for your
signed.
time.
It'll be in the packet.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you
Chairman,
very
if I-
much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say one thing. I want to thank this board and also Mary Ann and the Finance Committee for providing the funds to get those postcards out, given the fact that 2 precincts changed. And the explanation that I heard tonight clears up a lot, I think, of the issues that were presented at the last meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody have anything on Westfield? We have an upcoming meeting. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. No, it's on the calendar.
I wrote it down. Mr. Chairman?
We have our next meeting.
I don't have my calendar.
We do have an updated RFP, Mr. Chairman, per the notes and per the DVD, and I want to thank the staff, Janet Wilson and Shirley Oldfield and Rebecca Figueroa for working on this.
And
So-
this also went to the study committee as well?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and then we just got it tonight. We'll have a chance to review it, and we can kick it around next week. The consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, we have one bill from CDM for the Cremisa Park and Oakdale Sewers, which is a monthly estimate for partial payment number 17 in the amount of $210,815.78. And I believe that Mr. Judici is here. Should he come up to answer any questions, Mr. Chair?
Well, we'll see if there are any questions.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve the CDM Cremisa Park and Oakdale Sewers monthly estimate for partial payment number 17 for contract number 2, project number CWSRF 3022 in the amount of $210,815.78.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Begley. Anything on the question?
Well, did you have a question, Mr. Snyder?
Actually, I actually do. And seeing as Mr. Judici is here, I wonder if it would be...
Mr. Judici, would you come up, please?
You might have the same question I do.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Judici. Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Judici. Looking at this bill, I'm wondering, Mr. Judici, how far along we are in having a final number on this particular project,
Excuse
so
me.
that we can set the betterments.
Sure. First, just for clarification, that's an estimate from Gioso, the contractor, just so people don't think it's a bill from CDM. If that's not, if the next invoice may be the last one, the next pay rec may be the last one. If not, it would be two more. But certainly at this point, we're close enough where we know with pretty closely what the final number would be. So we're getting that point. At this point, we're just down to the last dozen or so punch list items for them to complete. And they've been working on those over the last several weeks. So we think within the next couple of weeks, they would have those finished.
Right, and I believe that there was a number that was put out there to residents at one point, and forgive my memory, but I'm not clear on what the number was, the estimate of what the betterments were.
20, 22.
In the 22 range, but we don't want to speculate.
Yeah, it just
Right.
makes people
Well,
worry.
Your phone will blow up if you speculate the wrong number, Mr. Schneider. You know that.
I agree, Selectman Holm, Mr. Chairman. And I guess part of what my concern is that, I'm hearing feedback that there's been virtually no information given out to these residents. They've received no letters, they've received no updates, and they want to know what's going on, as do I.
Probably getting close to time for another Saturday meeting, isn't it? On contract too.
That's
what we typically done in the past.
yeah.
As soon as we get something to put out.
Yeah,
usually have those.
I don't know that we've done them at the end of the projects, but if that's
And I'm not really clear, on the entire betterment setting process, and I certainly don't want you to think that I'm focusing on you, Mr. Judici. I'm
Thank you.
focusing on the process here. The fact that there has been no communication and really no updates provided to these residents. I can tell you, sitting from my standpoint, I'd be pretty upset, as I think many of these people are. And, we need to start, as a board, looking at a way to keep people better informed about what we're doing. Because we're talking substantial money to these folks. And, I do want to know, moving forward, what the process is. And it doesn't seem to me that there's been any clear communication from either this board or anyone from the development teams. So what are we going to do about it?
I'll recommend that to the chairman to get it on next week's agenda or the following week to have that process reread to us again. There is a process. I remember they'd come in and gave it to us. I think it was not St. Jeanette. Maybe it was St. Jeanette, Mr. Campino, when he first took over.
Yeah.
They did explain all that, how it works, but maybe we can get that on an upcoming agenda.
Right. Well, one of the reasons I'm expressing the concerns, Mr. Chairman, is I think that you have also expressed concerns surrounding the issue of the approximately $500,000 worth of study fees and how those are going to get paid for, who's going to pay for them, whether they're going to get carried by the sewer users, whether the town's going to pick it up. I don't know. Are they going to get? I want to make sure that they're not being, put on betterments that they shouldn't be put on.
I agree. Mr. Winslow?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps to answer some of Mr. Schneider's concerns and also my own concern, Mr. Judici, is that you said there's about a dozen things left on the punch list, but is this an older invoice? Because this invoice is showing 96.5% complete. I would expect with only a dozen things left, we'd be at 99%.
Well, typically we hold retainage, and I'm not sure
Right.
what percentage retainage we're at this point. It should be indicated on there. So that
I
would
think
certainly.
it's 2. 2.5.
2.5%.
So that brings
that-
us up to 98.
And I'm not sure what the time period of that particular
Okay.
pay
All right.
rec is, so you can see it's
Yep. No,
getting down to the wire.
I just wanted to make sure. Mr. Chair, you are correct. There is a whole process that we went through, and part of that process was a letter or a postcard that was mailed out letting everybody know about the hook-in process and things like that. And it probably would be a good idea if, as Mr. Judici says, we're pretty close to that 99% mark, if we get that information, together. The letter wasn't just, it had to do with hook-ins and hiring an appropriate drain layer. It was very, go ahead, Mr. Judici, you want to add to that? Or
I'm sorry, no, I was
Oh,
going to wait till
okay.
you were finished. That's fine.
as part of the betterment setting process, one of the things that happens is that Mr. Campina, and I'm sure with Mr. Judici's assistance, goes through all the costs associated with the project, from the initial design. And remember, these designs go back in some cases 8-9 years, right down to what we're talking about today, this invoice. And then they go out and they check the number of residences. And did we count lots that became buildable in contract 1 or no?
I'd have to defer to Mr. Campino on that, and he
Yeah.
is in the process, going through that process for contract 2, determining the actual total number of connections.
And then that would be, right. I don't think that we did count we'll have to check on that. And then, so there is a whole process, and it probably would be a good idea to kind of get a refresher in that.
We'll get that set up as soon as possible.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have one other question. We had a gentleman come before us at Citizens Participation, Mr. Robinson, asking for clarification as to why most of the bills seem to be coming in under one contract number. Is that the case, Mr. Judici, that you're aware of? Do we have one contract? Do we have one sort of contract number for all the invoices? How are we tracking the different contracts, contract 1 and 2? Are they invoiced differently?
Absolutely. They're completely separate, both in terms of the contractor's pay requisition and our invoices for our services are all delineated by the contract based on the work that was performed. Absolutely.
Okay, it's just so, for example, a contract number or an invoice number CWSR F3002 is given to us. Which contract or phase would that pertain to?
The CWSRF refers to that's the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, and there is one loan that the town has through the state DEP for the SRF process. So there's only one DEP number assigned to this whole program, regardless of what contract. As I said, when we invoice by contract. So you will only, if you look at the plans, the specifications, you'll only see that one 3022 number because that's a DEP assigned number for this particular program. The individual invoices are delineated by contract.
I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think since it's out of the scope of this motion, I'd like to request that 2 items on page 6 be placed on the next agenda since it came up as an issue, the water main change, which is, yep, and then the pump station relocation, because all of that comes to about $350,000, and I'd like that to be on the next agenda.
So
Please.
you're asking to hold this invoice?
No, because these have already been paid. These amounts are not on this invoice.
Oh.
That's why I didn't mind bringing it up.
Mr. Chair, if I may, through you to Mrs. Begley to clarify, on page 6, item numbers, I couldn't quite hear which ones you were.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Sure.
It's the last 2 items, water main change.
CO1 and CO2?
Correct. there was some question about whether or not that was a district contract.
No, I just wanted to make sure I had my notes correct.
Okay, is there any other questions or discussion? You have a motion made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr.
All
Chair,
abstained? 4-0-0.
400. Mr. Chair, since we have Mr. Judici here, I'd like to make a motion to take under sewer business, under number 11, sewer business, item A, discussion regarding contract 2 and contract 3, if that would be the pleasure of the board. Out of order.
Motion to move it up to now, 11A. By Kara. Second by Mrs. Bagley. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? We now have 11A, discussion of contract 2 and 3 in front of us.
I guess we've already kind of started the discussion on contract 2, Mr. Judici, because we've already asked ongoing questions from Mr. Campina about if warranties were going to expire. There were some issues with various pumping stations and SIM cards, et cetera, and there was a particular pump station when I attended at the trailer that would frequently either be shut off or shut off. It was kind of a mystery at that time. So I guess since you're going to be on a future agenda, that would be fine. Now my question about contract 3 is I would ask this board to meet with you, with Mr. Campina, with possibly Mr. Ethier, and the design plans for contract 3. Because I know that you had multiple hearings. It was prior to the time that I was on this board. So I would really like to see those designs. And if it pleases the board, we could possibly have another public hearing so that people could ask questions.
Anyone else? Mr. Steiner?
Yeah, I guess from my standpoint, I think we had a meeting back in June where contract 3 was discussed. And again, one of my concerns is I think that we have outstanding costs for the design phase of contract 3. And I think, Mr. Judici, you and both Mr. Campina, as well as the municipal maintenance director, had suggested that there were other alternatives in moving forward with contract 3. But to date, I've seen no further discussion about or any movement forward on achieving any type of savings on contract 3. And I think that from my standpoint, we need to have a serious discussion about it because we do have those fees that are out there lingering as well. And I know that there are questions from my standpoint related to the design work as well. So I'd like to know, are we, as the sewer commissioners, going to move this forward? Or is this, are we waiting for something from CDM? Where do we stand at this point? What direction have you been given?
We haven't been given any since that meeting and the project was put on hold. We have been on hold waiting for direction. So, just
but it was it your recommendation also that we hold off on this process?
I don't think we made a recommendation.
But part of the discussion was that you felt that there were other alternatives to reduce the costs related to contract 3. Isn't that correct?
Potentially, in theory, I think what was talked about, I think Mr. Campino had put forward the idea of potentially adding other areas into contract 3 to increase the number of home or properties that would be served. And as we discussed, that could be possible. It obviously depends on where that area is, what the density is, because you would need quite a dense area in order to help offset the cost that's spread amongst a few users that are in contract 3 currently. So again, we haven't been given direction in terms of looking at anything else. We're certainly happy to work with the town and go in any direction you.
Was that issue ever raised, Mr. Judici, in either contract 1 or contract 2? Was that possibility that we could bring in more users to reduce their costs as well?
Not that I recall, no.
So how is it that we got to contract 3 and we decided that that was, or that you decided that that was the case?
Well, I think I was asked a question, what, if anything, could be done potentially to reduce the costs? I mean, those contracts were delineated based on studies that were done a number of years ago.
Right.
It was only when the issue was asked if there's a way to potentially reduce the cost.
I think that question has been asked right along, not only from, from this board, but also from previous boards in relation to all the betterments. And I guess, again, I'm wondering why it only came to pass as a recommendation for contract 3 and not contract 1 and 2, or any other contract that we've done in the past.
I don't know that Mr. Judici can necessarily answer that. I think part of the issue was, living through this for the last year and a half, was that there is a big difference between 1 and 3. Double, a little more than double the cost. You have folks in phase 1, I think they paid about 15 and change, and these people are looking at 35 to 37.
Right.
So there's a big difference there between that.
Dude,
and I think that's when
there's also been big differences between Wee Wee Antic, Rose Point, Briarwood.
I wasn't here back then, so I can't answer those questions.
Yeah.
I believe those were in the same range, that 15 to 16,000. But just to back up a little bit, as I said, those areas were delineated based on the previous studies. A former board decided on how each of those areas would be broken up into separate construction contracts. And as Mrs. Winslow indicated earlier, the way the betterments are calculated is the total cost for each of those contracts divided by the number of properties that are served. And that's the extent of the calculation. There was...
On that note, how does bringing in, because if we're paying specific costs to bring a service to a specific number of users, in order to reduce the cost, you're bringing in additional users. How is that reducing the cost?
I'm not saying definitively. I said that would potentially be an option. There's obviously additional costs associated with studying what other areas could potentially be brought in, and B, doing cost estimates on what it would cost, because obviously there's a cost for both the study, the permitting, the design, and the construction in these other areas that would potentially be outside of Contract 3. So there's a cost associated with that, and it would only be if that cost were lower on a per-property basis that would help lower the per-property cost over the entire newly configured, if you will, Contract 3. So I've never said that it would definitely do it. I'm saying that would be a possibility. It's something that would need to be looked at.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to, I think that this is an issue that should be discussed by this board and thoroughly vetted. And I'd like to get it on the agenda for discussion solely related to, all of these, solely related to the contract issues. And in particular, the funds related to the study.
Okay.
Can we schedule a workshop or something of that nature with Mr. Judici?
Yeah, I think if we got Mr. Judici, Mr. Campina together, and that way we have all the history, because a lot of that goes back before I was.
Might I suggest that...
And Mrs. Winslow. I think Mr. Cruz might have been here when it kind of first got going.
Is it my turn? Is it my turn?
No, I think I recognize Mrs. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Judici, there's, we're going to schedule a workshop, but I have a couple of concerns. One is, since the comprehensive wastewater management plan, I'm sure technology has changed, and I've not seen the design, so it's kind of difficult for me to speak to something that I've not seen. We also had town meeting vote that voted to borrow $20 million and identified the 12 areas. My concern is this. First of all, yes, it is very expensive to do this area, the way the design exists and the way, if we're going to base our assessments on the technology from 2002. My hope is that we can reduce the cost because of technology and maybe reconfigure the design. Because I'm concerned about, I'd love to sewer the whole town, but finding an additional area, it concerns me because I don't want to find an additional area and say to these people, well, if we just did your area, it would be $12,000. But because you have to supplement another area, it's going to be 18 or 20. And I find that's difficult to comprehend for anyone, and it's not something that I would support. The other thing is we've already expended money from Contract 3, so someone does have to be responsible for that. It can't simply come out of the enterprise fund so that those that have already paid into their betterments and their EDUs are paying twice. They've paid for their own project, and they're going to pay an additional sum of money for a project that doesn't better their properties. So there's a number of issues that I hope that we can clear up when we do schedule our workshop. Thank you.
If I may, the town has copies of the design. I'd be happy to send along a set of the design plans to the board for their review as well.
Sure. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just to clarify a few things, because I know this whole concept is extremely complicated, but the issue of reducing the cost to Contract 3 was brought about not just because of the sheer cost, but because we weren't able to put any of those ARA funds that we had originally thought we may be able to towards Contract 3, which, even though it wouldn't have had a huge impact. But also, all the contracts at some point were in a design phase. And sometimes many years went by before betterment was set. I mean, we just set the betterment on Contract 1, last year? About 12 to 18 months ago? And those plans were made 7, maybe 8, 5 or 6, 7 years ago. It's been quite some time. It takes a long time from the design phase through completion and a betterment. We have this comprehensive wastewater management plan, and I'm curious, and I'm looking forward to a workshop because that plan is now about a decade old, and in that plan it gives us until 20 something? 24 to complete these projects. So then in 2024, do we go back and we look at the town all over again and decide, I mean, what's that process? How do we go about looking at what impact, and these are just, you don't have to answer these questions tonight, but these are some of the questions I'm going to have for the workshop. How do we go about determining what impact we've had with Contract 1 now hooked up over a year, Contract 2 about to come online? I really want to know what the impact of that has been, and how do we, if it hasn't had the impact that we assumed it would, where do we go from here with that? And I do agree with Mrs. Begley that there are an awful lot of technological advances, and there are ways to soar that are not traditional ways. We have package plants. You have other options that are available to us. What I don't want to do is, I don't think that it's fair of us in these chairs to put a betterment that's more than double what the first contract was on homeowners in a down economic market, because we're inhibiting their financial ability to do anything with their largest investment. If they're already underwater in their home and they can't do anything, they can't go anywhere, you can't just tack another $37,000, $38,000 onto that. Or if people are just on the borderline, that could be the difference between a refi and not a refi. And I think we have to be really careful about the timing of this.
Thank you very much. So if I might just recap, we're looking for several things. We're going to put together the workshop, and we'll get some emails out to check availability with Mr. Now you mentioned Mr. Ethier.
Just to speak to the identification of the areas, if he has that information in his office, perhaps.
Okay. I'll include him on the distribution. And basically, it's to address several issues. The agenda would cover the process of the betterment cost and how we set those rates. To talk about Mr. Juicy as an action item is going to send out or make available the current design to the board and anybody else on that invitation list. We're going to have a detailed explanation, because I've seen some emails, but that didn't quite cut it for me. A detailed explanation of how Contract 3 money was paid in Contract 2 and how that affects the betterments of Contract 2 and 3, right? And then, what am I missing? To discuss design and new technology, which Mr. Campina may be able to shed on that. And so, I'm thinking it's probably a Saturday morning, maybe 2.5, 3 hours or something. And we can add any other additional sewer business on that meeting as well. Mr. Schneider.
And Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Mr. Schneider, you missed one thing. He's also going to give us an idea of what impact we've seen with the last Contract 1, which has been hooked up.
Oh,
so, and whether or not that's
and
whether or not that's in line with what our expectations would have been.
Okay. Mr. Schneider.
Two things, Mr. Chairman. Well, or three things. One, could we include Mr. Foster as part of that discussion and working group?
Yeah.
Also, I wasn't clear on whether you said we were going to investigate alternatives to look at Contract 3, get it done, but bring the betterments down, as was suggested by these gentlemen as a possibility in the future.
Right, and I think that would be covered under the design discussion.
I just want to make sure it's, yeah.
Yep.
And then the other thing was, Mr. Chairman, whether it come from this board or whether it come from CDM or the Director of Water Pollution Control, I would like to have a letter, an update of some form go out to the residents of Contract 2.
Residential communication, right? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I don't mean
Yes.
to interrupt Mr. Schneider, but if memory serves me, Mr. Campina drafts that letter. This is how it worked in Contract 1. He drafts the letter, and he gives it to us to approve.
Yeah,
That's-
I don't want to speak for Mr. Schneider, but I think what he's asking for, and following along, is that we need to get some kind of a communication to the public in terms of the status of where we're at. And maybe it's not a mailing. Maybe it's something we put in the paper, some kind of communication to say, hey, folks, you have a vested interest here. Here's where we're at. We're not ready to set it yet. What's going on with it?
Exactly,
Instead of this
Mr.
black
Holmes.
hole of nothing until it's set, right?
Exactly correct.
Am I following you?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I understand that, but also as sewer commissioners, we've been pretty consistent in the past of approving those types of notifications prior to release, because if you remember correctly, we did have an incident.
I do remember very well.
when-
He's not asking to send a betterment letter. What he's asking is to send communication. And hopefully, I see members of the press here this evening, and hopefully that will get started tonight for free. And I think that once we have this meeting, maybe it's an open meeting, obviously, and I'm thinking that even those minutes be published and so that people can read what's up, what's going on, what's happening, what's the latest news kind of information, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, could we ask Mr. Andrews to direct Mr. Campina to produce that document and bring the document as some sort of update for Contract 2 and bring it to this board for prior approval as sewer commissioners? Could we?
Contract 2.
Contract 2. That's what Mr. Schneider was referring to, was Contract 2.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to do that.
Couldn't hear you, Mark.
All right. Did you hear that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, anything else? Michael, thank you.
Is
Is
Mr.
there anything
Judici?
else on the agenda that Mr. Judici needs to be here for?
Well, we are going to discuss EDU rates, but I don't know if that's his purview.
I don't think we need Mr. Judici for that.
Typically not involved in that, fortunately.
Get a long ride ahead of him. Michael, do you have anything
Just
for us?
a couple, just for clarification, if I may, Mrs. Winslow, to your point, you had discussed,
The impacts.
impacts. Clarification how you are looking to define impacts.
The-
Receiving waters. I'm
Yes,
assuming?
the bay, the impact on the bay. As you know, we did a big multi-million-dollar upgrade at the sewer treatment plant, and we identified these 12 areas as being sensitive, and I'm wondering what impact we've had on the health of the bay
Sure.
in reducing the nitrogen.
We'll certainly put something together on that. Just
Okay.
to preface that, I would say certainly we'll see an impact based on the plant upgrade that was put online 5 years ago now, maybe 6. Clearly, Contract 2 has not been turned over yet, so no one is connected, so there would be no impact from that. Contract 1 has been online for about a year, as you said, and how
Right.
much data is available for that from that period on.
I'm not.
So just-
To be clear,
Yep.
I'm not looking for specifics.
Sure.
I'm not sure where it came from, but there's some
Right.
type of report out there that says, when Contract 1 goes online, this percentage, and it's got all these, real scientific data, and I'm sure you are aware of what that is. I don't know where it actually originated from. I'm not sure that the document that I was given is an original in its entirety. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But I'm curious as to whether or not we're on track in terms of what we're doing, if we're getting where we want to be.
Certainly.
And I think we should be looking at that. A year after Contract 1 and a year after Contract 2. Just makes sense to make sure that we're meeting the goals that we thought we would.
And I think that would be good discussion to have it at the workshop.
Yes.
When everybody has documents there so that we can
Right.
we can discuss it.
That's what I want.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much,
All
Mike.
set?
Thank you,
That's
Mr. Judici.
Thank you.
Johnny, you got something?
No, I was just going to say that I think what Selectman Holmes is alluding to is... Selectman Winslow is alluding to is the fact that, when we did the comprehensive wastewater management plan, that plan was done in response, it was mitigation for us building the water treatment facility. Is that correct? And I think what she's looking for, when we submitted a environmental impact report to the Department of Environmental Protection, and basically said that in order to offset the amount of pollutants that we would be putting into our watershed, we would be reducing pollutants in the 12 areas that were identified to be sewered.
Yeah, I think it was a holistic approach. I mean, certainly the plant was the major source, so that was priority number 1, but these other areas were identified to work in concert with that upgrade to improve the overall water quality in the area.
Very good.
That makes
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Mr.
much.
Judici.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike. If we could return back to the consent agenda, Mrs. Winslow.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have the
Mrs. Winslow?
Yes, Mr. Chair. How many windows are you opening, Mr. Schneider?
7B.
We have the approval of regular meeting minutes from December 13th, 2011, which we held from the January 10th, 2012 meeting. It looks like the issue was actually Mr. Schneider, so
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've reviewed them, and I'm comfortable with how they,
okay.
and I thank Janet at the office for
So I make
diligence.
a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from December 13th, 2011 as written.
We have a motion by Kara,
Second.
second by Mr. Schneider. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? 400. Next, we have license.
Mr. Chair, next we have
Thank you.
licenses and permits.
Sorry, it's a habit.
I know, that's okay. We have an application for change of hours from the Mill Pond Station LLC, doing business as Mill Pond Station, 2569 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, under the provisions of Chapter 138 of the Massachusetts General Laws. Is there anybody here from Mill Pond Station? If you could identify yourself at the microphone, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Linda Burke, representing the AD Makepeace Company, which owns Mill Pond Station.
Thank you. I
this
didn't know that.
Really?
I thought maybe you had a new job. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This request is simply based on economics. There's less money being spent and/or more competition in town.
Mr. Chair, is this increasing or decreasing hours?
Decreasing the hours.
So on Sunday, it used to be, what were the previous hours?
The hours used to be Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Sundays from noon to 7. And we're requesting that it be curtailed on Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., close at 8 p.m., and Sunday from 12 to 6.
Any questions? Mr. Steiner?
My only question really relates to, would you anticipate any increase in business over the summer that you might want to kind of, we've had the issue over the last couple of weeks of establishments being open, longer hours or more hours in the summer than they are during the winter.
Well, we would certainly hope that would happen, but I'm not prepared to say that right now.
Okay.
Anybody else? No. Can I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the application for change of hours from the Mill Pond Station LLC, doing business as Mill Pond Station, 2569 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, under the provisions of Chapter 138 of the Massachusetts General Laws.
Motion made by Mrs. Winslow,
Second.
second by Mr. Schneider. Anything else on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? 400. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have
Mr. Chair.
Papa.
Next, we have an application for a common vic license from Papagenos.
I at least try to pronounce it.
I'm not even going to try. Inc., 2899 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, Mass., under the provisions of Chapter 140 of the Massachusetts General Laws. Do we have anybody from Papagenos here? Come to the microphone, sir, and state your name.
Thank you, Chairman, Board. Dan Fortunato, General Manager of Papagenos in Wareham.
Welcome. Am I to guess that you failed to renew?
Yes, we failed to renew. It was a communication error between...
Lost your calendar?
Yeah, well, communication error
Water.
between Joseph Weeks, who is our accounts payable up in corporate office.
Okay. Any questions from the board? We have a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the application for common victulars, not right, license from Papagenos, Inc., 2899 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, Mass., under the provisions of Chapter 140 of the Massachusetts General Laws.
I have a
Second.
motion made by Mrs. Winslow,
Second.
second by Mr. Schneider. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 400. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, next up we have the town administrator's report, but might I suggest that we have a number of people waiting here to see us that we requested, so if it's okay with Mr. Andrews, could we get through the folks that are...
If the board has no objections, that works for me. Go ahead.
Everybody good? Okay. Mr. Andrews, I I don't want you to feel slighted, but
He doesn't mind.
yes.
Let's keep going.
Okay, under town business, I'm going to skip over item A and get directly to item B, which is the right of first refusal for Digital Federal Credit Union. Mr. Harriman, I believe, is in the house.
How are you, Mark?
Good evening once again.
Again.
My name is Mark Harriman. I am from Digital Federal Credit Union, and we are the owners of the Bay Point Country Club, as the board is well aware. I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No.
Okay. As you know, Bay Point is a significant asset here in the town. And as with all significant assets comes a complicated set of facts and circumstances and so forth. There is leased land there. There is town-owned land in the middle of the golf course for the water tower. There is Bay Point-owned land and so forth. And there are no fewer than 20 easements on that property, some dating to the Hoover administration. After significant due diligence.
Don't complain to us, by the way. You bought it.
That is true. That is true.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The original, as you know, the original price on Bay Point was $1.7 million. So in less than 7 months of ownership, we were able to get a buyer and strike a deal. However, after significant due diligence on the property, the buyer has come back to us and renegotiated the deal. And we agreed to effectively reduce the price to $1.4 million. As you see in the letter before you, effectively we have the same deal, but they have looked at the property and said it needed significantly more work than what they originally anticipated. So what we had originally envisioned was a credit at closing. However, in the interest of transparency, we wanted to bring this back before the board because it was a significant number. So the price has been dropped to $1.4 million, and we are here to ask you to once again waive your right of first refusal on this purchase. If you'd like, I can go over the deal a little bit. Sure.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just to clarify, and I'm sure this is how you're
You say that, and I look to the left to see if Mr. Cruz is...
I know you do. I know, Mr. Harmon, that you're going to probably go through this. But when we did the right of first refusal, was that just on a letter of intent, and you'd not really, the deal hadn't progressed to as far as a purchase and sales?
Correct.
Or so you were still negotiating. So that was when this board voted to waive the right of first refusal the first time.
That is correct. You voted on a letter of intent.
Correct. Now, is this deal, do you have a purchase and sales, and that you are closer to closing, and it's the same company?
Same company, same buyers.
So, but it's $300,000 lower purchase price.
Correct.
So it's the same deal, the same company. You're closer. Are you closer to closing, or am I just assuming?
No, we are. We are. It's been a long process. May I interject for just one moment?
Certainly.
You are operating right now on a request, which is an amended letter of intent. Mm-hmm. The P&S has been negotiated. We talked about the final terms today. If it was not signed by 5 o'clock today, I expect the full P&S to be signed tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So we are that close. And once it is done, if the board votes on the right of first refusal, we could then close fairly shortly.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, I don't have...
Mrs. Winslow?
Thank you. I don't have so much as a question, but I appreciate all the efforts that Mr. Harriman has put into Bay Point. It certainly does have quite a storied history. Not that the viewing audience at home or here in the room really needs to rehash that, but you do realize that we don't have to do this tonight. This would trigger our timeline again, correct?
That is correct.
I know that's not what you want to hear, but at the same time, I do think it's incumbent upon us to do our own due diligence. I know, but I just want you to...
I'm just hot.
Yeah. No, I know. And I'm sure that I'm not helping. But I'm hoping that we don't just rush to make a decision. I understand you've worked very hard, but
Well, Ms. Winslow, I don't think you are rushing to a decision. I think it's, in effect, the same decision. But we wanted to be very transparent and bring this back before the board, just to make sure that everyone is on the same playing field here. Let me take you through the deal a little bit. The original deal was $1.7 million. The borrower was going to put down $600,000, and we were going to finance $1.1 million at a 3 years, over a 3-year mortgage. Effectively, what's happened is, yes, we've dropped the price, but the mortgage amount is staying the same. It's $1.1 million. Instead, the way that the initial equity is being divided up is $300,000 is coming to DCU, and we are requiring the borrower to escrow $300,000. And we are then going to be giving that back to the borrower once $300,000 or more of improvements are actually done to the course. So, think of it as this could have been done as a buyer and a seller of a home, whereby there was a credit at closing for certain things, and we just chose not to do it that way. So effectively, you are looking at the same deal, and you're getting a guarantee of a minimum of $300,000 in additional improvements to the course, as well as the pavilion building, and it would be improving it for the play, not only for the members, but also for the town, because the pavilion building will be open for, events and so forth. So effectively, you do have the same type of deal.
okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Begler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Andrews, this waiver that's before us is virtually identical to the one that this board voted on with the prior deal. And the waiver, in my estimation, simply means that the town doesn't want to buy it, or we're not going to encourage the town to purchase this property, and that the deed restrictions that were voted on by our legislative body will be preserved. Am I correct?
That is my understanding, and council has looked at it as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Harriman, I do see how this transaction is occurring, Mr. Harriman, and I do appreciate your attempt at transparency, because one of the questions I had initially in the beginning was the whole, with the initial transaction was kind of whether or not there might have been some other side transaction, quite frankly, and I think that this clarifies a lot for me.
At the time, the last presentation, there was no contemplating us coming back here.
So what is the motion? Mr. Town Administrator, is this the motion that I have in front of me? And I would make...
Before you do that, the question I need to ask is, this new waiver is only in regards to this transaction between Digital and... I always get that.
Stone Street. Stone.
Yeah, I got to make sure I got it. It is specific to this. Right.
We would have to...
And the second question I had was, have you cleared the second piece with the CETA board yet?
CETA met last night, and I have not heard the final vote on that.
Okay.
But the hang-up was just a clause in the insurance clause in the mortgage.
Right.
And so that they were voting yesterday. I have not heard.
All right. Mr. Schneider, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, that each time, we would end up with a right of first refusal. Again, it's perpetual.
We just want to make sure, right?
Right.
Okay. Get a motion?
I move that the town of Wareham, on this 24th day of January 2012, waive its right of first refusal as set forth in that certain deed from the town of Wareham to Wareham Economic Development and Industrial Corporation, dated November 24th, 1981, recorded with the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds in Book 5091, page 489, and filed with the Plymouth County Registry District of the Land Court as document number 210150, and as set forth in the deed from the Wareham Economic Development and Industrial Corporation to Four Pines Development Corporation dated August 7th, 1987, recorded with the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds in Book 7919, page 128, and filed with the Plymouth County Registry District of the Land Court as document number 276278, and as set forth in the ratification and acknowledgement regarding protective restrictions dated August 25th, 2006, recorded with the Plymouth County Registry of Deeds in Book 33358, page 224, and filed with the Plymouth County Registry District of the Land Court as document number 611449, with respect to conveyance from Digital Federal Credit Union to Stone Street Corporation or its nominee. It is intended that this waiver have the effect of an instrument under seal under the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I have a motion. Second by Mrs. Begley. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
310. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, folks. Good evening.
That'll be signed tonight. You can get it tomorrow, right?
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Next up.
Mr. Chair, we have a meeting with the recycling coordinator / committee.
Don't we have an individual lady here?
Sewer business.
Yeah, she was going to be next because
Recycling committee is
the
next.
recycling committee, yes, and I'm not sure if everybody got this, but I think we should congratulate the new Mrs. Russell on her recent marriage. The former Marilyn Fields, who we all know her as, is now Marilyn Russell. Congratulations. And let me wish you, on behalf of the board, many, many years of happiness. Trillions.
Jennifer Gady, chairperson of the recycling committee.
I'm Jack Dixon, who's supposed to pay the bills.
Ah, welcome. I get a few. You want them?
No, we have
No.
not.
If you'd like to give us a welcome, and if you'd like to give us a summary of some of your activities, that would be just wonderful.
We recently received a grant from DEP, about
Well, this is the place to ask for it on Tuesday night because this is the best show on TV. We get volunteers when you ask for them right here. Members of the board, Mrs. Winslow, starting on your end.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recycling is one of those issues that's near and dear to my heart, and we certainly do a lot of it at home. And if I happen to forget, I now have the recycling child who takes good environmental stewardship at school. And last night she rescued a container of spaghetti sauce and got it all over herself. We are so fortunate to have this extremely dedicated group of volunteers who really put a lot of hours into our recycling center. And for those who haven't had the opportunity to go, I encourage you to. And they also do a fabulous job of making a lot with very little. They don't operate on a very large budget, and they don't take in a huge amount of money, but they still manage to provide a really excellent service for the community. So, and I just really like this group of people. So, thanks for all your hard work.
I would add to that and invite the selectmen and the TA to come down and see what we do. Then they will know what we're talking about when we come for requests or compliments.
I thought you were going to ask the town administrator to take out his checkbook. That's not
well, yes, that is something I would like to. Now that you brought it up.
Thank you very much.
About 3 or 4 years ago, the town eliminated the recycling coordinator's salary and funding. And rather than go without, because the committee felt that it was a necessary adjunct to maintain communications with the state and for securing grants, we have taken to contract her. She is contracted now to the recycling committee, and we have in the town warrant, you have seen fit to put in an article for, it was 3,000, increase it to 5,000 to help defray the cost of the recycling coordinator. Although we're are bringing in enough money to hold us fairly well, we're reducing our revolving fund by $2,000 to $3,000 a year in order to pay the recycling coordinator.
Right.
And I would like to see the selectmen add $3,000 to that $5,000 budget to help defray the cost of the recycling coordinator, so that our funds can be used in lieu of that salary for other things, of publicity and education.
Thank you. We'll certainly take that under advisement.
And also Jennifer Grady, who's next to me, not only volunteers up there, she also volunteered a shed that we could use.
Very good. Mr. Schneider?
I would just like to thank you folks as well. You're clearly providing a very good service to the town. I especially like the idea of recycling the paint. And I know that you mentioned latex. Is there any possibility in the future of oil-based paint as well? Because, I mean, that's a...
Oil-based and hazardous is taken by municipal maintenance under the CMR, Carver, Marion, CMW, Carver, Marion, Wareham, and I believe they pay for that, and it's held at municipal maintenance building.
It's usually the first weekend in May, first Saturday.
Oh.
Well, the center does take, we charge people per gallon. And we save it, take it to hazardous waste.
See, I told you,
Great.
they're very
Well.
resourceful.
Well, paint.
Latex paint is a bigger problem because it's hard to dispose of. You need
Right.
to buy kitty litter, and it's so
Well-
hopefully with this grant money,
Well, that's why I especially like the idea, and I know that the hazards associated with latex is our next lead, unfortunately. And I think the idea of being able to recycle it and actually have people utilize, small portions. I know I'm always looking for little amounts of paint to paint something here or there, and I think it's a great idea, a great program. No good. Right. great.
Just further one thing, Jack didn't know about this, but, because I just did it today. I emailed the FinCom meeting, FinCom committee and asked them to be put on the agenda for the first meeting in February.
So we'll ask them for some additional funds, the same $3,000.
Right. Miss-
We won't
Mi-
ask three from each of you.
Right. Yeah, that wouldn't work out, though, would it?
This is an election year, we can't do
Yeah,
that.
Mrs. Begley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had requested that you folks come in here, and first of all, I wanted you to come in because I think you're unsung heroes. Absolutely, we need recycling in this town, and I wonder, has it really affected you with the increase in curbside recycling, or no? Because I was, prior to curbside recycling being available, we were summer residents and came up to that area quite frequently to recycle. But now that we have curbside, we've found it to be unnecessary. Have you seen any difference at all?
Does your recycling, the rubbish collector, does he recycle? Or
Yes.
all this in one?
A truck comes that has a separate glass, has separate paper, separate, right, they separate it right there from the bins.
We've been working with the Board of Health, but we're having difficulty enforcing the regulation that they should provide recycling to every house that they do. If you ask for it when you call up the company and you ask specifically for recycling, I understand they do give it to you, but if you don't ask for it, you don't get it. Yet it's in the contract that they have to figure no extra cost for recycling. So ABC does a fine job. The others, we're not sure. And Board of Health and our recycling committee, being all volunteers, are not able to get out and follow the trash trucks around to see if they're mixing the trash and recycling. So until we had the manpower to do that, we only have their word. And sometimes I think it's an estimate of what we should do.
Great.
Just one other thing. One of the reasons why I also wanted you to come in was when I read the 2011 Bound annual report had just come out a couple weeks ago, and I was kind of alarmed with the capital letters saying that you were going to run out of money. This will be depleted in FY 2012 as we currently estimate, and we intend to make a final plea for additional funds ASAP. Failing any positive response will mean the town may have to reassess how they handle recycling. So I was a little bit alarmed by that.
Well, we started out, back when we first took over the recycling coordinator salary contract, we had around 14 or 15,000 in the revolving fund. We are down now, I think, was it now around 4? Because each year we're going into our revolving fund, which is only, as she said, from donation from bottle returns and what people we have to charge people for tires and white goods.
What do you pay that? What's that salary for the coordinator? What do you pay for a year? How much is it? 8,000 a year?
Yeah.
So you're... That's okay, finish.
Unfortunately, when we make that estimate, we had a big shortfall in our revolving fund because the accounting department, they're short us $2,600, which is a lot of money for us. The accounting department, they're short us $2,600, which is a lot of money for us. Hopefully we've got that back, although we still haven't seen it in writing.
Mr. Andrews, could you check on that, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to check on that. This is the first I'm hearing of this. I'll check on it first thing tomorrow.
Has that fund or any of the recycling budget items or any of that been audited at all? On an annual basis?
All the funds that we get and disperse go through the town treasurer's office. We turn the funds over to him periodically, and then when we pay out, it goes. But they had one question that I have always had, is the Recreation Committee and the recycling committee in their list of different budgets side by side. And at one time, they found that they were depositing the recreation, revolving money into the recreation fund. And when it got to be, she said, $2,000 or $3,000, we discovered it, and I think that because the numbers are sequential, that this is because they look at recreation and recycling and get them confused going across the line.
Sure, Mr. Andrews. Mr. Andrews will look into that, and if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Andrews, get some communication back to the board and the recycle committee.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
The discrepancy that Jack is talking about, and Earl is talking about, what it is, basically, some money was put into an incorrect, into another revolving fund and not ours. This is at the time Biz was the accountant.
Just easy. Yep.
No, Mr.
Yeah.
Andrews. Yeah, he's gonna look into it and get back to us this week. He has to do the research. Sure.
So this is something that you suspect happened, but it's not been, the account hasn't been audited, so you're not 100% sure. You suspect that it's happened. I understand. So Mr. Andrews will look into it. Right. But, so the only, I understand.
Okay.
I think Mr. Andrews could probably look into that, right?
I have it.
Mr. Holmes?
He's going to take care of it.
So the only paid person is the recycling coordinator and everyone else is volunteer. I understand.
The rest of us are about 15.
Great.
Thank you.
My only comment would be a big thank you to all of you and your committee for the fine work you do. And then I would look out into the town. $8,000 certainly is a lot of money. But to many, the people who are listening right now, it's not. So if you're looking for a good place to donate some money, and you think green, a nice annual stipend of about $8,000 to the Wareham Recycling Committee would be a good place to start. And then if you get 8, people donate 8, you can give us back the 5. How's that? Is that you'll find something else, or you'll find an assistant, won't you?
Well, they're 50-50 with you. We get one to give us 8, we'll go try another one.
No, it's a great, and and there are people who donate to this stuff. So if you have a great knack for the environment and you have a few dollars, it'd be great to donate to our recycling group. Anything else? Thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you.
And we'll see you soon. And Mr. Andrews will get back to all of us on that issue of the fund. Mrs. Winslow?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We had also been scheduled to meet with the Capital Planning Committee. However, they did send a brief email, which I will simply read into the record. And I would ask that whoever in the office does the minutes, that they put this in there for us. Dear Chairman Cruz, this is addressed to the Chair. The Capital Planning Committee reviewed the email sent by Mrs. Figueroa requesting the committee to come before the BOS. The committee voted not to come before the BOS at this time. The committee would ask that the BOS submit a list of questions on what they wish to discuss. The committee would then revisit the issues and make a determination. It's possible we could arrange a joint meeting with a printed agenda. Yours truly, Alan Slavin, Chair. With, of course, the request that the statement be read into the record.
Which you have just done so eloquently.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, my request would be that we schedule a discussion about this for the next agenda for what issues we may want to communicate to the Capital Planning Committee.
Mr. Chairman.
We can come up with that. I'm sorry. So we could come up with that list or agenda and determine how we want to proceed forward.
Mr. Schneider?
I thought that the idea was that we were going to have all of the committees come in and give us updates on, what their activities have been.
Agree. However, this particular committees that we appoint must show up. Committees we don't appoint don't have to show up.
Well, I would respectfully disagree with you on that point,
Well,
Mr. Chairman.
I would hope that they would all show up, Mr. Schneider.
I would too.
I was pretty disappointed to see this. However, we have a weapon in our disposal, and it's the town administrator. He sits on that committee as well.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he could shed some light on what, if he was there, on why this negative response.
Mr. Chairman,
And you're speaking as the town administrator, who's a member of the committee.
you are correct by virtue of the office that I hold. It was rather disheartening because it's a critical time. We're putting the fiscal 2013 budget together. The committee has had the 5-year recommended plan from the town administrator since December 15th. And so and I have submitted my budget per the charter, Article 5, by December 15th. So I did not support this, written response. I will ask the chair in the morning to reconsider and bring it before the committee for reconsideration, because it is just a critical time. I have not received any signal on any part of the capital plan I've provided in my fiscal 2013 budget, and it's time that we start to get some feedback on it so that we know which directions we're going in. And respectfully, I would ask that they do that and come and just give us an update as to where things are. They're very articulate and they're very deliberate, but I think we need an update from them, and I will strive to get that done, Mr. Chairman.
And this is the board chair, the moderator, chairman of finance, right?
Appointing authority.
Right? Yeah, I was pretty disappointed to see that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's disappointing in the sense that, it's not even so much from the standpoint of sitting here as a member of the Board of Selectmen, but, I view it as a disappointment for the community, those people here, that heard us talking about this, and I certainly hope we don't run into this with other committees. But
Certainly not those we appoint, Mr. Schneider.
Agreed, but if someone can point to me where in the charter it says that the Capital Planning Committee doesn't follow the same policies as any other board as established by the Board of Selectmen, I'm happy to look at that if that's an issue, and I hope that's not the issue, because we're all supposed to be in this trying to work together.
I agree with you. I would say that, even entertaining a motion to, of course I can't create a motion, but that we send a letter to the appointing authority requesting the Capital Planning Committee come in and talk to the people in front of the Board of Select. I don't understand. I mean, it wasn't I think they were just going to give a report like we just had. Isn't that what we asked for?
Exactly.
There was no interrogation. I wasn't there, so I don't know what was said, but I would entertain that motion. We can get that out the door in the morning.
So moved.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, because this bound copy of the annual report 2011 was only available to us in the last few weeks, is when I started flipping through, and what my intention was when I brought them up was on page 205 and 206 is the annual report from the Capital Planning Committee. So that was for fiscal year 2011. We're well into 2012 and want to see how it's progressed thus far.
Sure.
But I would second Selectman Schneider's motion.
Seconded to send a letter to the appointing authority asking the Capital Planning Committee to come in to a near future Board of Selectmen meeting and report on the fiscal update and status on the fiscal 2011-2012 report.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Winslow?
I'm sure you probably don't have the answer to this question, but does the appointing authority have the ability to direct that committee?
Typically, my opinion is typically you respond to those who hire you. The appointing already hires those people by vote.
I would, again,
I know.
respectfully
We may not
disagree.
agree on
I
the
would
issue,
respectfully
but I
disagree.
listen to my boss. I don't necessarily listen to somebody else's.
And maybe that's something that we should ask for clarification on, even maybe through town council. I hate to say it, but obviously, the charter is very specific in what powers and duties it outlines for the capital planning committee and also the appointing authority, consisting of the chairman of the board of selectmen, the town moderator, and the chairman of, I guess.
I personally am disgusted that we're even having this conversation.
I agree with you, Mr.
So
Chairman.
we have a first and second on sending a letter. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Andrews, would you abstain? Mr. Andrews, would you see that something goes out tomorrow, please?
Chairman.
I can't believe we just
Chairman, I
wasted
will-
5 minutes on that.
I'll take care of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Mrs.
Chair,
Winthrop?
I'm going to skip ahead to item 11C, the SOAR abatement at 39 Bayview. I believe this is the last individual in the audience who's waiting for us. And if there's
Good
someone
evening.
else, then we'll certainly.
I'm sorry, did you say C?
Item 11C, SOAR abatement, 39 Bayview Street.
Mr. Campino,
This
you're
should
already
be
there.
Mrs. Paula Mazzola.
Correct,
Yes.
thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Paula Mazzola.
Mr. Chair, I know Mr. Campina is going to take over, but this has come before us in the past.
Yes.
The policy, which I'm not going to debate the merits of the policy. I know you don't agree with it. But the policy is that your water has to be shut off for a year before we can abate a sewer bill. So the water, in this case, was turned off, and I believe we have the letter from the Wareham Fire District. It was turned off on April 26, 2010.
Correct.
What was that, Mr. Campina? May 5th. May 5th, okay. You know what? This copy is really hard to read. Was turned off May 5th, so she became eligible for an abatement on, thank you, that's a much better copy, would have really been July 1 of 2011, right, Mr. Campina? Or is it fiscal year? You might, 12 calendar months, not fiscal, okay, all right. Okay, so how much of an abatement is she now entitled to?
$99.34. And that is for June and July. The second half goes going out now, and that's going to take August 1st to January 31st. So what I'm asking is grant the abatement and to put her account on hold so she doesn't get billed for the second quarter. Because the issue is that she capped the sewer.
Yeah.
It's a demo. She literally capped the sewer, so you can't, it's not to the house. So my intention is, in my position, or my point is that she really, truly has no sewer line. So if we grant this and put her on immediately, she won't get any future bills. Stop it. And then when she gets ready for her occupancy permit, at that time, we can reapply the account, open it up again, and start charging.
So that would be $99.36, did you say? 34 cents. And why, just out of curiosity, why aren't you including May in that calculation if it was cut off on May 5th?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
June and July, because it's 2 months here. You're probably right.
In relation, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Campina, in relationship to that question, you said that the water was shut off on April 5th, but the letter from
No, May.
May 5th, but the letter's dated April 26th.
Correct.
Well, the letter from the water department said that it was shut off May 5th. I think it's clearer there. We asked for this, that's the actual shut off is May 5th. So that's the date we have to go by. That's when we physically shut the water off. They hit the curb, she no longer has water. So our policy states we go 1 year from that date, and you're correct, it was May 5th, 2011. So she would get, we gave her June, July. Why we didn't do May, I don't then we're saying if we put her on hold now, she won't get a bill in the second half, which is going out in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
She won't get billed. Leave her on hold, and then when she actually gets her goods occupied, at that point, we'll bring it back online and start billing her at that point.
Okay. Mrs. Mazzola, do you have
I'm not
any?
understanding where you're coming up with $99 when I have a bill for $900. I don't get this. I don't understand.
Well, the problem is this goes back a ways. We can only go back, as you know, 1 year. Anything previous to that, we can't touch.
Well, previous to that was paid.
Well,
And this has been accumulating since 2010.
well, let me just
And when I first came to see you in 2010.
let me just explain so that you understand. We can't go back and retroactively abate to the date the water was shut off. And again, it's a policy, and I don't think this current sitting board has discussed it, but I know the prior board had discussing that policy, and I agree it should be revisited. However, arguing the merits of that isn't going to help the situation because the policy is the policy. So you are responsible for the billing from May 5th of 2010 to May 5th of 2011.
That's where I have a problem, because when I did request June 13th an abatement, and I was denied.
Right, because
And that would have covered it back then, wouldn't it?
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that there's a policy, and we can't change that policy. We have to
That
follow.
wouldn't have changed the policy, though. If this was done on June 11th, the denial for this abatement, June 11th was done, because I went to see him on this, and he said, you need to wait a full year.
A full year.
Exactly. But it's not $900 worth of water. It is not. And it's not $800 worth of water when it has not been used. And I can understand I may have to pay from 2010 to 2011, but it's not $800 worth.
Well, and the amount, I don't know.
Then there's got to be someplace where this can be visited.
Yeah,
That's Mr. Campina.
Let's not
Yeah.
speculate on the answers. Mr. Campina, do you have an answer on what this is?
Anything she was billed previous to the actual abatement period, I'm not that privileged to speak. When she came and did her abatement application, the water was specifically said it was turned off on May of 2010. I can only speak to the next year, and she had to wait a year. So until that year, everything previous to that, she's responsible for. When that year came in, then we can go forward, which would have been June and July. Everything before 2011 May, she's responsible for. Everything after, we're going to give her the 2 months abatement, and then we're going to put on hold so she can pay the rest. Anything before that,
But
she's responsible.
for June and July 2011 till now is only $100?
It's $99, but
Then why is it $800 for 1 year? And it's only $100.
$596 for a year. It's not $800 for a year. A year's only $596. So anything forward, I can't speak of. I'm just speaking specifically because your letter was dated, the water was turned off the 10th, so I'm going to 11. So at that point, we move forward. Nothing before that I can touch. Now, I can only move forward. Once it gets May 2011, we move forward. So I abate June and July, because that's the fourth fiscal 2012. And then we get ready to build the second half. And what's confusing is because we do fiscal and we do calendar.
And what's the cost? And what's the cost of June and July total?
She's entitled to June and July $99.34. And what I'm saying is that she's getting ready to be billed another half year, so I'd like to put on hold so that bill doesn't go out.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, is it possible, Mr. Campina and Mr. Andrews, to take a look at this account and see if you can help Mrs. Mazzola understand where the numbers, because the conversation about the numbers isn't really we can't do anything about that. But I would like to know that somebody can sit down and look over the account and help Mrs. Mazzola understand it, or if there's an issue, address the issue, so that we can move on with the discussion of the abatement.
Has that not been done, Mr. Campina? Have you not sat down with us?
And I understand she's not satisfied, because still bill her because we don't have a policy for her. We have to wait for the water 1 year. So if we had done, if there was a policy that said, yes, anytime you demo a building and you cut and cap, we stop charging. We wouldn't be here, but that's not happening. So if we didn't go back and change it, I can't change it retro. I can't say, well, it's a nice policy, we go back. I can't do that. So I don't know what's our disposal to make it right through. I don't know.
All I'm asking is to sit down and look at the account and help her understand where those numbers, how those numbers come to that, because I don't think we should have this conversation on TV. This is her.
I don't even need that because I have the invoices from the first time right on, and every time I received one, it got higher and higher. I don't need explanation of why I'm being charged so much. I want to know how we can change this so it doesn't happen again, because the house, I have a building permit, a demo permit. Why am I being charged for water? I understand you have this law, but there's got to be something there to say there are exceptions.
Well,
in order not to have people come and cheat and lie, I understand. But your department, your building permits are here. It's not me just saying it. The building permit's here. This is saying there was no connection. So why would I want to be paying for water that I didn't even have?
Mr. Chairman.
That's where
Mr.
I'm
Schneider?
having a big issue with.
I believe that this is one of the issues that we had tried to, or we had discussed having a sewer workshop on, which hasn't occurred yet. But I think the immediate issue is at least getting the abatement number that Mr. Campina is recommending, and at least get a hold on the account at this point, so there's no further charges incurred.
We take a motion on that.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to issue a sewer abatement in the amount of $99.34 for 39 Bayview Street. And I'm looking, I don't see an account number on this paperwork. Mr. Campina? 738-550. So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Made by Mrs. Winslow, second by Mr. Schneider. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? 400.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to put a hold on account number 738-550, located at 39 Bayview Street, until such time as the water is turned back on.
I have a motion to hold the account for Mrs. Winslow. Second?
Second.
By Mr. Schneider. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? And that will be added to the workshop to review the policy on cap and, I was just going to say cap and trade. I'm sorry. It's not, I'm not making light of that, but
No.
what was it?
It's called cut and cap.
Cut and cap.
No longer has availability in the sewer. Once that takes place,
Okay.
I'm suggesting that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Mazzola.
Thank you for your time.
patience.
Mr. Chair, while we have Mr. Campina up here, should we address the other three items that require him under sewer, or would the board prefer to go back to?
Yeah, let's just get through it. He's sitting right there. Take
Um,
longer to get back and forth in the winter.
What?
Go ahead.
Mr. Campina, item B, the policy regarding the EDU rates.
I don't know if anybody was here.
Is this the washing machine issue?
Yes, it's
The laundromat?
It's about, there's a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if everybody has a policy, so I gave the water policies, and that's all we have to go by. So you probably have, but I'm just going to do, and this is what I'm identifying as the problem.
12-01. What policy?
12-01.
Deal with abatements. I don't know if you all have it there, so I want you to have the policies. And that's what it's all saying. This one here is just an example. The one you have here is just an example of an idea of how to deal with something. It's not, certainly not a policy as far as you should put in effect, but it's a concept, because one of the issues with laundromats, in this particular case, is it's seasonal. And what he's saying is that he shuts down. It also speaks to the seasonal motels. They shut down, they said, okay, what do? We're paying for water and we're not there. Well, that's beyond me, so it's something the board has to look at. And whatever the board decides is what it is, but that's the problem. We have letters from these property owners, these commercial property owners, that are saying we're looking for relief. So
And our current policy, again, is 12-01.
That's just an example, a proposal. Yes, that one.
This is our current policy. No.
No. No.
It says Town of Wareham Policy Statement, Board of Selectmen.
Well, it's his how it should have been. I'm sorry. This is how it should have looked. This is a draft example.
Well, that's why I'm asking you, right?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think this falls into the, thank you, Mr. Campina, the workshop, into the realm of the workshop and an overall discussion of the sewer policies. So if it would pleasure the board, I suggest that we move on to the next item and discuss this at that time.
Okay.
Unless you want to discuss it now, but
It's just that obviously it's nice to get this like a week ahead of time so that the board will have time to review it before we start.
Agreed, Mr.
Next
Holmes.
up.
next up we have a sewer abatements held from the November 1st, 2011 meeting. Now, Mr. Campina, we have account number 735691, map 1, lot 1032, 1 West Boulevard, Mary Sharella. First half of FY 2012, $298.
That's another one that was a sewer. You'll see all these are hold. They were going to be included into a sewer workshop. She had a beauty salon in her property. She hasn't used it for years. She's taken it down. There's nothing there. She wants some type of relief. I have none for her. So again, her issue should be discussed in a sewer workshop. As Mr. Marino has a strip mall, if you will, up by Lobster Pot. He owns all that strip. There's only one water line coming in. Businesses come and go, so he has no way of shutting water off. He's looking for relief. The Hallahans, they have the mobile home parks. They move mobile homes in and out constantly. They're looking for some type of relief. So again, I suggest that being that very same workshop. You know, so I think back in June, this was discussed about having a workshop, and all these things were on hold for that workshop. Well, if we're going to do this workshop, then this is where all these things should be discussed.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I would make a motion that we place this list of items, which consists of account number 735691, 767-427, and 739-708, 738-992, 738-196, and 736-644 on hold until such time as the board has reviewed the policies in the sewer workshop, scheduled hopefully in the near future.
I have a motion made by Mrs. Winslow. Do I have a second? Fails for a lack of second.
But we don't have any way to address these abatements.
We'll just put them on the next agenda and try again. Next up.
Next up, we have a sewer failed septic system at 3 Indian Neck Road. Mr. Campina?
3 Indian Neck Road, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I was out there this year. We had a single cesspool that is failed. The gentleman who owns that property, I believe he's here, asked us if we could tie him in. And the board helped write a letter. I believe he was here one night. I'm not so sure. I was out of town on vacation, so I apologize for that. But what the issue is he wants to tie into contract 2. Contract 2 is presently being used. We have I apologize, but the senior citizens.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, I apologize. It's the senior citizens. I'm going to be there one day myself. But anyways, the senior citizens are already tied into the system, and there's 2 homes already tied to the system because they built their own treatment pump station, and part of the agreement contract 2 is that we abandon that pump station and tie
last summer sometime. So they've been using the system as it is. You go directly to Indianet and on it goes. So the system, the contractor is being used. So there's no reason, for that reason, we can tie them in that issue. The only concern I have, for me, is betterment. That's a hot button. So I have no problem doing this, but I want you to clear and total understanding that he will be responsible for betterment set that contract too, whatever that figure is. And that's my contention, because I think that's the only thing that could be a hot button for me here, because everything else is doable. I'm doing it anyways.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Campina, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if he doesn't pay a betterment and somebody wants to tie into the sewer, then they pay a sewer development fee, which is equal to the last betterment, correct?
Right now, that's $15,000. So I want it to be this contract too. Because if we use that, we do have, that's right, the last bet was $15,000. So if he ties in now tomorrow, let's say he ties in tomorrow, and he applies that, then he pays $15,000. I don't want that to happen. What I'm saying is that he's going to stay in contract too, and we have to have a legal document, or some document that says, yes, we'll tie in because of the emergency situation. However, you will pay contract to betterment. That's my concern.
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Town Administrator, is it possible for us to ensure that we get some type of contractual agreement to this prior to? Can Town Council look
Yes,
at
of
it? Because
course,
I'm not
Ms.
sure that it's even legal for us to.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Town Council will be here tomorrow, so why don't we bring this up to him in the afternoon and ask him for his review of it, so that if we find the proper form and the proper language, if it can be done. Okay?
Mr. Chair.
Spigley.
Mr. Campina, is this the residence that we've been getting a few emails from the Board of Health and from your office that it's a failed system?
No, I have another one. I can get you the address down the road from this.
Okay, so this isn't the home with the failed system. Okay, that's it. That's all good. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Just,
we will.
Mr. Chairman, just from my standpoint, it would be helpful for me to see, is there a certificate that normally gets issued, Mr. Campina, that's saying that there's a failed septic system?
There's a letter written by the Board of Health that condemns this system. So I was out there at the Board of Health, and yes, it is inspection. It's a failed system. In the presence of the homeowner, he condemned it because it's a constant pump, because if he doesn't pump, it's going to come out. So it was condemned. So he asked for relief. Well, I don't want to fix it. It's becoming cost prohibitive to keep pumping it because it's that failed. So he asked for some relief, and I have no problem with that. Yes, we have the building element. Let's help. But I just want to make sure we dot our I's. And he's agreed on this. Yes, I'm going to pay the betterments. And he's really
Right.
straightforward about it. He's willing to do this.
All right. So to be clear, Mr. Andrews, you're going to speak to Mr. Bowen tomorrow, and we'll get a letter back by the end of the week from Town Council to Mr. Campina and the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, we'll present to you, Mr. Chairman. We'll present the full issue. Pull the file guy come up tomorrow afternoon, and we'll run it by Town Council.
Can you make sure that standard mark some kind of a letter we can?
Language.
All right.
Moving right along, up to any other sewer business. I don't have any other sewer business.
Anybody else? Sewer? Mrs. Begley?
This, I'm not sure that this falls under sewer, but it kind of goes to what Mrs. Winslow was discussing earlier about the impact of sewering these areas on our waterways. This board has received multiple emails, I think, from Corin Peterson from Buzzards Bay Coalition that's been looking for documents and trying to get the immediate release of the final Wareham River Estuary report. So I guess what I'd like to see from this board, because apparently other abutting towns have voted for this, to send a letter of support requesting the immediate release of the final Wareham River Estuaries report. And I have a draft letter here, if the board...
Yeah. Mrs. Begley, one moment. Didn't we we already sent this letter once. This would be a repeat letter. Last year we sent a letter following their presentation to Representative Gifford, Patrick, Paul Patrick, and Senator Pacheco, and I think Teresa Murray, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Chairman, I believe this is a different letter, separate letter with requesting documentation from a number of cities and towns, including Wareham, that was a FOIA request made by the coalition that is going to cost several thousands of dollars for us to produce. I just want to make that clear for the record.
This letter would go to the Commissioner Kenneth Kimmel of Mass Department of Environmental Protection, Chancellor Jean McCormick, University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and it would be CC'd to Senator Pacheco and Representative Gifford. But what I'm looking from this board is, supporting the immediate release of the final Wareham River Estuary Report. This is something that we've been waiting years for. Years. And I would be... would you prefer that I read the draft letter into the record and then it can be attached to the minutes? It's not very long.
Go ahead.
I already...
This is part of your motion.
Yes, sir. This letter is to Commissioner Kenneth Kimmel, Mass Department of Environmental Protection, Chancellor Jean McCormick, University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. Subject is Massachusetts Estuaries Project, known as MEP, Wareham River Report. Dear Commissioner Kimmel and Chancellor McCormick, the Wareham Board of Selectmen, voted at the January 24th meeting to send you this letter, requesting the immediate release of the final Wareham River Estuary Report. The town is eager to take action to reduce nitrogen pollution to our critical coastal resources, and the release of this long overdue report would serve to help guide us in those actions. It is our understanding the Wareham River MEP report was originally due in 2004, and much of the information needed for the report was collected as part of the water quality investigation of the Wareham River Estuary Complex completed by CDM in 2000, in which Dr. Brian Howes, Center Marine Science and Technology at UMass Dartmouth, was co-author. This investigation served to support the development of the 2002 Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, which led to the successful upgrade of the Wareham Wastewater Treatment Plant. The now 8-year delayed Wareham River Report, together with the delays of other reports throughout Buzzards Bay, compelled the Buzzards Bay Coalition to draft an extensive public records request to your agencies to determine the underlying reason for the delays. Our board supports the Buzzards Bay Coalition's efforts and urges you to release the requested records together with the Wareham River MEP report as quickly as possible. It is critical that the MEP give towns the tools needed to protect their coastal resources. Sincerely, the Wareham Board of Selectmen.
I have a motion made by Mrs. Begley,
Second.
second by Mrs. Winslow. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We have a copy of that. Mr. Andrews, will you take care of this and make sure that Janet gets a copy, please?
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I just want to make sure that I didn't miss anybody that was waiting for our attention, and if I have not, then I would go back up to item number 9, Town Administrator's Report.
You have Mrs. Green.
She's right on.
Do the senior work off so she can get out of here.
Yeah, she's part
she
of the,
is.
yeah. No, I
saw
didn't.
that
I
on a
wouldn't
separate-
forget
on a
Mrs.
separate
Green.
list.
Mrs. Green, please join us. Mr. Chairman, Susan Green will provide us with, as per the board's request, an update on what's happening with the senior work-off program. She's done some research with regards to surrounding towns, and with regards to what is happening with the program. And an early vote on the program will get us started as we begin to move forward with this in April.
You're up, Mrs. Green.
Susan Green.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, is this also addressing item number 10E, vote on the senior work-off program?
Yes.
Okay, so the 2 in 1. Thank you. Sorry.
I can't take credit for putting the others together. I think Shirley did that. Shirley got some copies of stuff and put it together. The only thing I did was do a quick memo because I didn't find out till last Thursday that I was even going to be here tonight, and to get it in the package and stuff I did. So I think, as I said in the memo, my main concern now is becoming that a lot of people that volunteer for things now want that time counted towards the senior work-off program. And the program started to make sure that the beaches were covered. And the pier has come under that now. And as more people want to work inside and have all of this other stuff counted, we're going to have a hard time finding people that are going to staff the beach. And people aren't really volunteering. They're paid for this.
Right.
And I think it's going up this year to $8 an hour or something. So, but they're paid for that. And as long as they're being paid for that,
it would be like any other position, that you wouldn't hire people that you didn't need just to give them a job. You would hire people to fill positions that you needed. And I think that the beach and the pier probably have to come first.
Is this going up to $8?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's a minimum wage at this point. We might have to reduce the hours a little bit to justify where we are in the budget.
I did notice that some of the other towns limit it to $500 as a maximum that they can earn. And that might be another thing. If we limited the amount to $500 as the maximum, it would allow it to be open to more people. Fewer hours, but maybe then we'd have the beach attendants, plus we'd have the office work and stuff and the other things too.
If I could just add, Mr. Chairman, it's also important, and we talked about this at leadership team, that departments come forward and say that they're looking for somebody who has a background in certain finance areas and certain areas of town activities, and to formalize that. I've worked with a number of neighborhood organizations. I see Mr. Robinson and others that I've talked to, that we want to make sure we get the right person in the right place. And of course, it is very hot in the summertime, and the primary goal is to get the summer parking areas covered and have a way by which we can not only keep those programs moving forward. We are looking towards technology. In my 2013 budget is a plan to automate a lot of that, so that we would obviously be focusing on other areas. But I think the key is to have the department heads come forward with definite needs and try to match up seniors to qualify for the program with the particular needs that are at Town Hall.
If you haven't finalized that number, what is the point of the vote? It's just to support the program?
Yes.
Or it seems to me it would make more sense if you had a number and you came back and said, here's the program we're going to vote on. Why would we vote on something that we don't know what the final answer is?
We're endorsing, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, we're endorsing the program by vote of the board to move forward, and then we'll be putting the program together. It does take, Susan, what do you think? It takes several weeks to match people up with the positions.
Oh, sure. No, I understand that part,
Yeah.
but we're not voting on an actual number.
No, just to move the program forward at the $8 rate, which is the federal minimum wage, which we need to get to.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Winslow?
I would like. I'm looking at these other communities that you've provided us with there, and I really think that we need to adopt some of the guidelines that they've adopted to ensure that one, while I think it's wonderful that people go back to the same department every year and that they're so well liked and do such a good job, that does deprive other people of the opportunity. And so I definitely think we need to look at a lottery or some type of random drawing. The other problem is it never fails that we get complaints from people who end up on the pier and the beach because there are people in town hall and they want to be in town hall and don't understand why they can't be in town hall. So if we had a policy surrounding this program that people were just randomly selected for positions, that you're not guaranteed anything. If we need 5 people for the pier, it's a random thing like these other communities are doing. I think it might work a little bit better.
I don't know if you're asking my opinion, but as Mrs. Green stated earlier, this isn't a volunteer job. These people are getting paid.
Exactly.
$8 an hour.
That's what I'm saying.
And so I think that to randomly select, I tend to think for $8 an hour that the person managing the program should be able to fit skill sets with the particular jobs that they're filling. If there's someone with a computer background and they're sitting on the beach watching the parking lot, and somebody at the computer doesn't even know how to type a Word document, and that doesn't make any sense. We're still paying for this program. It's not free.
But if you read the memo that Mrs. Green wrote us, she suggests that the candidates first be screened to their abilities and then chosen by a lottery system.
Right.
So if you had...
I don't have an issue with that. I may have missed that.
Perhaps I should have been a little bit more clear about. But I would really like, and I hope that my colleagues will support this, I don't mind moving forward with the program, but I want to ensure that we get some guidelines in place for it before before we put our final stamp of approval on it for this year.
Mr. Chair. Back over here.
Mr. Schneider?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's okay.
Oh, was that?
That's okay.
I heard something. Go ahead, Mr. Bagley.
I don't want to interrupt.
Ladies
Right.
before gentlemen.
I may have missed this part of the discussion, Susan, but I see there's just a check mark for, do you have limited financial resources? Do you have like a specific criteria?
When the program was first adopted, it was asked if, I believe Jimmy Potter was the chairman at the time, and he didn't want to do an income guideline on it. And the other plans that are there, I don't see any of them that have that, so I'm not sure whether we're not allowed to do that.
Okay.
I don't know. I can check into that and find out, because I did check that with the other ones and saw that that wasn't relevant, because I know that there are some people. The other thing that you can do is you can also have a family member work for you if you can't. And you have to adopt that, and I don't remember now whether it's a selectman or a town meeting that has to do that. But if somebody's like 85 years old or something and they really can't do anything, they might be able, they can have a family member, a granddaughter or somebody else that will be willing to do that for them, and that's another consideration, because that might be a group that really needs this program, and they're not eligible for it just because they can't work.
Right.
But I don't know how you would figure that, because we could wind up with having no seniors working and having all 20-year-olds out there on the
I understand.
working.
So currently, we have a maximum of $750, is that right?
That's correct.
$750, but the surrounding towns, it's $500. So we would, this board would take this under advisement, but come up with the maximum hours and minimum hours. Minimum hours would probably be helpful, because if someone worked less than 10 hours, as some of the other towns had added that as well. So having a minimum and maximum number of hours and a cap. So
I think Wareham's probably sort of unique in this, that we probably are the only town around that even has this, that you're using it for beach attendants and that, because the other towns don't have anywhere near the 75 people that we've voted on to be on the program. They have a far easier to manage number by 10 or 20 of them. So they just fill in offices or a couple of things that are needed that we're not looking. I think we had 67 on the program last year. Not everybody put in 100 hours, but I believe there were 67 or 68 participants.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman. So, Susan, how many people are actually working at the beaches and pier of the 75? Because you have a recommendation in here for the number, to limit it, participation only to the number needed for the beaches and pier, and perhaps 5 or 6 inside workers.
That's something that I wasn't really able to obtain. They work in 4-hour shifts. I think that, and the pier wound up this year, they didn't have enough that worked at the pier. They wound up with a lot of people that volunteered, just totally volunteered. They weren't part of the program. They liked doing it, so to get that number and stuff too is tough. I can get that number and find out. I did try to contact Janice, but I wasn't able to reach her because she was the one that had the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, this program is a win-win from both the town standpoint and, the standpoint of the seniors. And I guess, for me, I would need to see, what the benefit is to the town in having these additional positions, what the savings is, Mr. Andrews. I think, some type of analysis. I mean, obviously, we don't have people, who are participating in this program who are doing nothing, and there's some benefit to the town. The question is, does the benefit match the services that we're receiving? And if the issue is that folks, we're not getting enough folks interested in the beaches and piers, which is what I think I'm hearing you say, we need to make it pretty clear that, people that are expecting to apply for this senior work-off program are going to need to expect to work at the beach or the pier at some point. And I think it's that simple from my standpoint.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just to follow up, that's the intent. If we have a definite need, we should bring this to the leadership team, outline those needs. I saw the grid that was put together last year with regards to the needs in the departments. Let's make sure they're legitimate. And we are different from other towns and that have adopted this, because we have a fair amount of need at the parking areas that are on the waterfront. So why don't we get that grid together and bring it back in a form and see if the board wants to make some suggestions.
We'll be here waiting when you get that done. The sooner the better, so that you can get off the run.
Sure.
Okay, next.
That's it. I
Thank you,
believe,
Susan.
Mr. Chair, we do need to take a vote to move forward with the program. So I would move that the board approve the moving forward of the senior work-off program for, is it fiscal or calendar year, Mark? FY?
It's actually April to November. I'd say for the fiscal 2012 and 13.
For fiscal 2012 and 13, and the town administrator will bring the Board of Selectmen the guidelines prior to, for approval.
Can you just restate the beginning of that? You're making the motion that the board support the program, not approve the program.
Support is fine.
Support. Okay, I'll withdraw my motion. I move.
He asked for support.
I thought he said.
Final numbers, he'll come back.
It says needed to approve.
Well.
Okay, support's good?
Support's
okay. I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen support the senior work-off program, and the town administrator will provide the board with a copy of the guidelines prior to implementation, for approval, prior to implementation.
That's a motion by Mrs. Winslow.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schneider. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? 4-0-0.
Back to you, Mr. Andrews.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to update.
Can we just finish that? You got one more thing to go under town business. Smelt. Right.
No, we're in the middle of the town administrator's report.
That wasn't part of his report on this agenda.
Yeah, she's on his she was under his leadership team. It's on there twice. He's got it on his administrator's report, and I don't want to interrupt him again.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just want to update in the handout to each of the members that was garnered from the 33rd annual meeting and trade show. I was proud and honored to have
Close the door. Thank you.
Selectwoman Begley and myself represented the town at the 33rd annual meeting of the Massachusetts Municipal Association at the Heinz Auditorium. We attended workshops and had heard from various speakers, and I will be bringing information back to you in the next several weeks with regards to capital planning and the environment. This year's theme was recovery, reinvestment, and renewal as cities and towns look to move forward. We did receive, and you have in your packet, I guess it's probably the best news, which is not bad news, which is that local aid funding for both unrestricted aid to the town and the school district will remain the same from last year. And the workshops focus on alternative revenue sources, environmental issues, technology, as I indicated, capital planning, transportation, and energy needs. And it was a very good opportunity to, as they say, work the crowd, talk to other town administrators, town managers, and mayors that are struggling with the same issues that we face. And this, once again, this presentation was made by Lieutenant Governor Murray with regards to local aid. And you have that before you. On item number C, I just wanted to update the board that we did present last Wednesday. All members were in attendance with regards to the fiscal 2013 operating budget, and which includes the town administrator's budget message. I will be looking to sit down individually and then collectively presenting additional information as we get to know further numbers. The governor will submit his House 1 recommendations to the House of Representatives, as you know, and we'll be getting additional local aid information as we move forward. Mr. Chairman, I also would like to stand corrected because I didn't understand the context of the letter that Selectwoman Begley brought up. Just want to make sure that I didn't oppose it. I want to make sure that that's noted for the record. I do understand once reading it what the content of it was about, and that wraps that area up. On status reports on ongoing issues and projects, I have been in touch with Senator Pacheco and his office on charter change relative to Board of Sewer Commissioners, and we'll keep you posted. I believe the second item ongoing, together working as one unit, was demonstrated literally at the joint meeting between the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, and in conjunction with other committees, Capital Planning and Finance Committee, last Wednesday's meeting. And an item's going to come up, just want to make sure that's noted as well for the record. Probably the earliest time that we could get a meeting together with regards to the so-called Action Committee would be sometime next week, Mr. Chairman. So when that item comes up, if I could just reserve a little bit of time to speak to it, as a memo had gone out from Superintendent Rabinovich on it. Town Hall virtualization is moving forward. They are testing the servers and working with the police department and getting ready for full implementation over the next several weeks, and I'll get an update from Mr. Underhill for you for next meeting. If I could also indulge the board for 1 minute, I want to make it clear that with respect to my evaluation last week, I want to make the record clear that I intend to work with the town. I'm hoping that I can receive, and I think I deserve, an extension of my contract, and hopefully that will be coming up over the next several weeks. I'd like to engage the board in other ideas and take any input, insight, criticism, whatever it might be, to make myself a better town administrator. But my intentions are to work for this town as long as you would want me to be here. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Mrs. Winslow?
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Chairman, just one comment through you to the town administrator. Mr. Andrews, I know last week was a short week with the holiday and the MMA meeting, but I just want to make sure that you keep on your radar our monthly or weekly spreadsheet.
Yes.
And if you could just give us a quick update as to progress.
I will be meeting with the town accountant in the morning to look at all of the items that are on there. It's a fairly complex report. I showed you the format a week or so ago. I intend to get that on the board agenda as soon as I can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Begley? Okay. Mrs. Winslow?
Mr. Chair, under 10A, we have Transportation Study Group. As we all know, last Thursday, we put together, it's actually not a study group, it's an action committee, which shall consist of the town administrator, the school superintendent, a member of the capital planning committee, and the chairmen of the school committee and the Board of Selectmen or their designee. Unfortunately, our chairman is not here tonight, so and I'm not sure if he communicated through you whether he plans to sit on that committee or should we just simply put this on for next Tuesday. I didn't have any communication. I didn't know he was going to be here, so.
Mr. Chairman? I did speak with Chairman Cruz, and he wanted to have the body undertake at least an initial foray at having a member represent the board. At least that is what he had communicated to me. We're trying to get multiple schedules. That's the point I was trying to make earlier to illustrate that the school committee or chair or his designee, and the Board of Selectmen chair or his designee. We really need to have those decisions together so we can set a meeting and move forward.
He didn't stress to me one way or the other, so.
Okay, that's fine.
He knew it was on. I think if Walter was really, unless he gets voted in absentia. But I won't. So anyway, the bottom line is that we met last week. We put together this action committee. Does anybody here want to do this from the board? Mrs. Begley, you're interested in this? Anybody else?
Well, I don't know what the.
Can I have a motion to appoint our member?
I would make a motion to appoint Ellen Selectman Begley as the representative from the Board of Selectmen.
Have a second?
I'll second.
By Mrs. Winslow. Anything on the question? You sure? Enough. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 4-0-0. Walter, we saved you there, brother. All right, next up. That's That's one less big piece of aggravation for him. Talking smelts, Mrs. Winslow.
We have the smelt.
We will be out of here on time, so let's keep it short now.
I know we will.
Okay.
We have the smelt regulations. These are the same. There are no changes to the regulations from last year. They go before the Board of Selectmen annually for approval. The permits are available Thursday, February 16, 2012, in the Harbor Master's office in the Multi-Service Center, one flight up. Thank you in advance for your attention to this matter. Well, you are welcome, Mr. Buckminster. I make a motion to approve the smelt regulations as authorized by Chapter 67 of the Acts of 1931 to take smelt from the Weweantic River between March 1st, 2012 to April 1st, 2012, both date inclusive for family use subject to the following regulations. 1. Limit 36 per day. 2. Net size shall not contain more than 5 square feet of net surface. 3. It is understood and agreed by the permit holder that he/she will abide by all laws and regulations of the state of Massachusetts pertaining to the catching of smelt. 4. Fishing is allowed 7 days per week. Application to the town of Wareham only. Permits available to inhabitants of the towns of Wareham, Rochester, Marion, and Mattapoisett. No charge for permit. No landowner not responsible for any damages to person or property. Violation or abuse of privileges hereby granted shall result in revocation of this permit in addition to any fine incurred. So moved.
Second by Mrs. Begley. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 400. Next.
Okay, so next up we have any other town business, and I actually have one really quick thing, if you'll indulge me.
All right, we'll start at your end of the table since you spoke up first.
Thank you. I met a woman, and I'm trying to get her contact information because I seem to have lost it. And she has a really interesting job. She's an environmental engineer, and I know that we had some grad students here a while back, and they did the environmental survey. And what her company does is they design programs whereby the town can go green, if you will, through the use of solar and other green methods. And the way that they get paid, and don't quote me on this, but it basically doesn't cost us any more than what we already pay. We basically, the savings, our energy savings is part of their payment. And I was curious if we could, and it's no emergency, but if we could, if I can get that contact information, if the town administrator could reach out to this firm and kind of give us an idea. You know, it may not offer us an immediate savings, but in the long haul it could offer us significant savings if we could work it out to put some of those bigger green initiatives in place.
Great. Please feel free to forward that to Mr. Andrews and the rest of the board.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
there were a number of those very companies that were at the MMA conference during the in the exhibition hall. So there was a number of them. So there may be, I mean, it would be awesome to talk with this particular person, but there may be, you know, I think that the net should be cast wider to see.
Maybe she was there.
She
It
most
could very well
likely,
have been.
yeah, she most likely was there. The reason that I, suggested her was because of the particular way that this company gets paid, which is different from some of the other companies. So it doesn't actually. I think that the cost of the project would require us to eventually go out to bid, or at least an RFP.
In this economy, Mr. Chair, with your indulgence, in this economy, I think we're seeing a lot of that. But you're right, and I think this is a hot-button thing, a green, saving energy. There was a number, I would say that there was at least 4 or 5 vendors there. More, probably more.
Mr. Schneider?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Andrews, and I apologize it's not on the agenda, but I'd like to have an update on Atlantic Metal Recycling.
Say it again, please.
I'd like to have an update on Atlantic Metals Recycling on Cranberry Highway, what the status is of that.
Mr. Chairman, what did not appear in my report because of the way we put the agenda together as quickly as we did last week, but I do have an update for the board, and I want to let the town know that we are working very closely with the owner to get him to a spot in the industrial park where he belongs, in my opinion. That was conveyed to him on several occasions. He came into the office today and asked for and received an application for a license for the time being. Paid a check of $150 for where he is. From what I understand, and also talking with him to him, that he understands that he has engaged a real estate agent to move him to a location in the industrial area. And that's by way of update, Mr.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
Just for clarification, so it's still at the ZBA, Mr. Andrews, and if is that issue, that license, going to come before this board at any time?
Yes, that license, I believe, would come before the board. It also, he has limited time left on the lease where he is. I think he kind of got stuck. No fault of the board or the citizens of the town. But he did say that he'd like to stay in Wareham and felt good that he would ultimately be in the proper zone for this type of activity.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews.
You're welcome.
You all set?
All set. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mrs. Bailey?
Nothing, thank you.
Liaison reports, Mrs. Winslow?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Liaison reports?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we had the recycling committee here tonight. I hope that everybody takes an opportunity to make a visit.
You're not going to repeat everything they said, are you?
No, I'm not. The capital planning committee.
Teasing.
I know you are. Capital Planning Committee, as you know from the letter that I read, met last Thursday. And the Library Board of Trustees also met last Thursday evening, and all is well. They are looking forward to their upcoming programming, which we all heard about last week at the when Mrs. Medeiros was here updating us, and that is all.
Mr. Schneider?
Mr. Chairman, the Affordable Housing Trust met actually a couple of weeks ago, and we're still working to try and put an item or a project forward that consists of accessory apartments. But also, the committee is expressing some concern because we seem to be starting to receive bills from other boards and committees, other bills from legal bills, which the no, we haven't paid them. But I think that's the point. We just want to make it clear that none of these bills should be coming to the Affordable Housing Trust without having been approved previously.
Right.
We have approved some prior, but it's just we need to get some sort of communication out that the Affordable Housing Trust.
I thought we put out that communication with access to town council repeatedly, created a new policy, enforced the old policy, laid the law down, right? And why is it still going on?
I think we've put it out 3 times. Is that correct, Mr. Andrews?
Maybe a 4th time would be a charm. Mr. Andrews,
You
could you put something out, please?
Again, I will
On
be
behalf
happy
of
to
the
do
board?
that.
Yeah, it's not that, I think it's not that it hasn't gone out. I think it's just the fact that, for whatever reason, people, and these issues could have, Mr. Selectman Holmes, could have been as a result of work that was done prior to those issues going out. But just to make it clear again.
Why is everybody coming here tonight with bills and they don't want to pay them? That gentleman, he didn't want to write a check either. Now you don't want to write a check. Hey, what's going on? We got to pay these bills somehow.
I'll bring mine
Are
next
you all
week.
set, Mr. Schneider?
Yes, I am.
Just that the Board of Health had a meeting, and they were discussing scheduling another workshop for the nitrogen regs. As you all know, it generates a lot of discussion.
Mr. Andrews, before we go, it's the end of January. Today's the 24th, right? We were promised a meeting with Rich Bowen or a representative from the firm in executive to update the Board of Selectmen on any outstanding litigation. Is that happening next week?
That's happening.
Next week is the last Tuesday in January.
That's happening at our next meeting, Mr. Chairman.
It
Yes.
6
The next.
o'clock? What time is it?
I do it before the meeting, and I did talk with Rich about it on several occasions. He'll have a full update at executive.
It's discuss it with us.
I don't know that we're meeting on the 31st. At least the board is not scheduled to meet on the 31st. That's my understanding. We're scheduled to meet on the 7th.
Yeah, Chairman
So,
Cruz
whatever
is
your
not
pleasure.
scheduled
That
one.
6 o'clock meeting is on the 7th, is
That-
that
that's
executive
correct.
session with Rich?
That's
Okay.
correct, yep.
That's fine. So there's no
You're welcome.
meeting next week?
That's my understanding, Mr. Chairman.
We could add a sewer meeting next week, a workshop,
That's right.
next Tuesday night.
We
Maybe
still-
can
we
pull it-
still can.
Maybe we can still pull that off.
Well, I think my point earlier, Mr. Chairman, was that the school district indicated that they would want to hold Tuesday open, given that they meet on Wednesdays, and that for that action committee to meet, first meeting of the action committee. That's my understanding.
Okay.
Motion
entertain
to
a motion.
adjourn?
Second.
Thank you all very much. Anything on the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for your cooperation, and we're 17 minutes ahead of schedule.
Don't forget, Saturday morning, does somebody want to bring?
You missed